Hello everybody, time for another video task. This video task should be paired with the previous video task called Picking a Moment. This one is called Thick Pictures. It's all about trying to tell more story with less images. Okay, so let's imagine your shot has a width and a height, and the width is something we would call the x value. Oh no, he's getting into algebra. He's doing algebra. The height is something we might call the y value. And so and you know, everyone kind of that's a fairly familiar idea, and it's the biggest mistake that people make when they're beginning the journey of learning how to do composition is that they're only really thinking about the x and the y value. They're still thinking about the picture plane as two-dimensional, and of course it's not two-dimensional. Our images have depth. They are thick if we artfully construct them. So imagine another plane that we would call the z value. Now you will be now as you continue your career, you'll often hear people talking about the z space or the z space. So can we include more going on in the z space of this shot? And what they're talking about is the layering of information into an image to have more going on and to create depth. Now this is particularly useful in animation where we arrange our assets on different planes in the Z space to do this thing that we call multiplaning, which creates the illusion of depth in the cinematic screen. This GIF is from a really fantastic Disney video that explains how their multiplane system works in the 1950s. It's really good. You should look it up. In the last exercise, we were breaking down an imagined story into visual moments. And in this exercise, the question is, how do I take those moments and stuff them into one image? How do I tell more story with my single composition? So if you've done the last exercise, you might have like a little comic made up of possible moments in a scene that you've imagined. And I want you to have a look at them, and I want you to try and identify them as thick images or thin images. Here are 4 compositions. The ones on the left are very clear depictions of objects or a character making, in this case, a character making a take. But they don't show any relationships between story elements. We need montage, or we need the images to be in sequence for us to create a relationship. Whereas the ones on the right, this one, for example, is has some relationship stuff going on. We have one character who is, through their body language, is showing a relationship to another character, through their body language is showing a relationship to the landscape and to the world. This kind of naivete or childlike attitude. And then we have a little bit of street furniture, which doesn't seem like much, but can be a huge signifier of place and space and time. And so for me, this drawing is a little bit thicker than this drawing. And in this case, we have our object, but there's no relationships. Whereas this case, where we have a very clear relationship between two characters, place in the background, and an object. And what's useful to us, if this story requires spatial orientation, and I think it does, it's a story about a bomb in a suitcase. So if somebody is close to the suitcase or far away from the suitcase, that information is really important. So a good visual storyteller will create compositions that help us to get that all-important information. So generally, thin images have very little use of the Z space. They don't have enough information in them to show relationships between or associations between characters, places, characters, objects, characters and characters. So relationships between story elements. They can often lead to spatially confused stories. So often you'll see thin images used in cinematic storytelling in scenes that are supposed to be spatially confused, like a chaotic battle scene, or perhaps a moment of psychosis, or dreamlike, or dreamlike sort of unmooring from real space. And thin images work in cinema and in comics and in storybooks, but they require montage to serve the story, which means they need to be placed alongside other images for meaning to be made. Now, thicker images, on the other hand, almost always use the Z space in 1, 2, or many more layers in order to get more information into the frame. And because of that, there's always a lot of depth. And because there's a lot of depth and there's perhaps a lot of in animation, there'll be a lot of assets on a lot of different Z planes. It's very easy and powerful to multiplane and rack focus, which is change the element of focus to even further empower yourself as a storyteller. Thick images have not just one relationship, not just 2 or 3, but many relationships going on in the same image. And they also provide spatial clarity. Who is where and in relation to what? And that can, and particularly if you're doing things that require action, like perhaps a military story or a martial arts story, then spatial clarity is utterly essential. So thick images can do all of those things, and because of all this, concept art, which is your ultimate goal here, tends to be very thick. We would never. Here's some examples. We would almost never have a piece of concept art that looked like this, right? It's flat. It's got no relationships. This shot could only work if we've been well set up prior to this shot. Whereas an image like this has a lot more going on. It's got a city in the background. In the medium background, we've got terrace houses, so we could perhaps put some real Sydney locations into here. We've got extras, like characters who aren't involved in the story, and that's a big part of making a story feel believable. We've got a tree, there's possibly some light and shadow opportunities here, and we've got our character who's perhaps having a very similar emotional moment, but that's shown through body language and through a kind of kinetic movement. So one of the problems is that everyone loves this shot. Every single storyboard that any animation student has ever done has this shot, which is a single face close-up reaction shot. And it is my belief that this shot is only allowed if you've earned it So a thin shot can be really powerful. But it has to be earned through making a thick shot. And in my story that I've drawn here, I don't think I have the right thick shot yet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my all of my information, all of my visual information, and I'm going to try and put as much into a single image as I can. And this is the challenge I want you to start taking on as part of your concept art assignment. This is kind of one way to plan some concept art. So I want a single image that shows the kinetic body language of this guy running, something about this expression. I want the relationship between the suitcase, this proximity between the vulnerable citizens and the suitcase. I want the suitcase, but I think I can probably do that with that one. So let's take that one away. I don't think I need that. I think I can maybe do these two almost in this one and this one almost in the same moment. So I'll take that away. I think I can include her expression here in that one. So I'll take that one away. Now this is going to be a challenge. This guy busting out of the police station door. I don't think I can use this one. And this one, maybe I can include the buildings in the background or some sort of all of this background information in the background of my drawing. But what I do, I think I will use the bomb unit. I need the word bomb in here somewhere, or else nobody's going to understand what this suitcase is or why anyone cares. This one, which is like the setup scene. I'm not sure I can include that. That might be a separate piece of thick description. So perhaps we could have that might be a separate piece of concept art. But what I'm really interested in is that moment of gut dropping when this guy is looking across the road and he's seeing this character, these two characters right next to the bomb. And this one is really important. I want bystanders. I don't want this to be like an empty street with three figures on it. I want it to be a busy, bustling street because I want people to go, oh, this is a big scene. A big production. A lot of people are going to get hurt, or the stakes are really high. And so I think I want this moment as well. So I think this is the actual moment that I'm going to pick, but I'm going to include all of the information I can from the rest of these moments, and I'm going to squish them together into a single image. Okay, I've had a go, and here's what I've come up with. I don't love it, but I think it demonstrates it's a pretty good example of a kind of a really rough starting point, a really rough thick image to get us started, and so we've got the vulnerable citizens here. We've got our suitcase here. We've got some bystanders over here. And their proximity to the bomb is shown, so it's quite clear to us that they're gonna get hurt if this goes off. I've also added a bit of extra line weight and contrast here to help our eyes move in that direction towards the MacGuffin. Now in the background, I've got a Newtown streetscape. We're outside the Town Hall Hotel. This is a great opportunity for me to go and do visual research. We've got a bus stop there. Bus stops in every city in the world are different. Can I get a Newtown bus stop? We've got the poles with maybe I can get some local band posters on that pole and really bring some kind of like hyper specificity to this place. What do the lines on the road in Newtown look like? I'm not sure. Now we've got our character who we are hoping to empathize with, and we've got their pose, their running pose, and this is a cheap shot, but I've put the word bomb on his back, because without that, I'm not sure people are going to see this as anything but a lost suitcase scenario. So for me, that's a quite an unsubtle way to sort of work, manage that problem. But what I like about there's a few things I think are working here. I think the place is already familiar to me, which is good, because I just sort of drew it from my head. But with further research, wow, you could get some real place specificity here. But what I like is the big city vibe going on here. We've got like a dog sitting in the boot of someone's car. Maybe they're driving back from the St. Peter's Dog Park, and the dog's noticing the action. And the dog's doing some work for me. The dog's looking at this character who's the center. So if our eyes move across to the line, they'll be drawn back to the character. Similarly, we've got this grumpy person who's had to slam on the brakes or whatever. I think they're driving on the wrong side of their car. They've got an imported car. It's the perspective is all whack. The proportions are all whack, but this is the rough version. But I like that. I like that there's somebody else's drama moment is happening here in the car. I like the idea that they're coming from Newtown, Enmore Road, Portos, and they've just dropped their hamburger in their lap. That's the little story going on there. This cyclist here has seen the guy running across the road and has stopped, and the person behind them has also stopped. And then these people waiting at the bus stop have sort of seen someone getting upset, and they're looking across the road at this guy yelling and screaming as he comes across the road. So the other thing that I think is useful here is that this is the focal point, and so the main relationship here is this character and these characters, and there's a lot going on in the drawing that sends our attention that way. If you look at the way I didn't really plan this; it just kind of happens that way. I drew these texture marks on the road. And they follow the perspective lines of the drawing, and all of those perspective lines kind of point up here. And similarly, there's all these people looking at this guy, and this guy is looking over here. So there's this kind of, it's almost like a river, or tributaries flowing into a river. All the tributaries flow into this guy, and his attention is drawn here. So our eyes are constantly wandering in the direction where the drawing wants us to look, and that's something that you have to strategize when you're designing your concept art. So look, I don't love this. This has got a huge amount of problems to solve, but I do feel like I could show this drawing to somebody, and they would have a pretty good idea of what the story was. They have a pretty good idea of the stakes of the story. They may have a good idea, if they're from Newtown, maybe they immediately know that it's a Newtown story. And so that to me is kind of a sign that this composition might be perhaps doing its job. And then if you do many of these, you could start refining the composition and really getting it to look beautiful, to be beautifully lit, to be beautifully coloured, and also to have all of those representational problems solved at great effort, I imagine. So that's your task, everybody, is to take the images that you made in the last exercise when you were picking a moment, and to try and sort of squish those images into the Z space of a single composition to tell as much story as possible within a single composition. It should take you about half an hour. If you take any longer than that, you're probably spending too long. I want you to feel like you could do this process multiple times to get the composition that really sings. That's it. That's the thick pictures exercise. Give it a try.